Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be reviewing Slay by Brittany Morris because I felt like we needed a bit of a laugh from the trauma of last week. And by trauma, I mean the generative AI theft. Oh my gosh. Some of the worst takes that I have ever seen. So let's just laugh. Let's laugh at the ridiculousness of what is coming out of traditional publishing. I discovered this book initially and wanted to read it and share it with you guys to prove that traditional publishing does not mean quality, because there is still so much discourse around I need to be traditionally published to prove that I have quality. Indie publishing is all trash. And I agree with you. There is a lot of stuff in indie publishing that is not up to par. People don't know how to edit. People don't know how to develop characters or storylines or even narrative voices. And the formatting is often in trouble. I get it. There is a learning curve on how to do everything yourself or finding the right people to help you if you don't have the money to do it yourself. I get that entirely. But traditional publishing is also not a moniker that simply means it has quality. Getting awards doesn't mean that it is quality. If that's anything that we learned from reading Library of the Dead, and had 2 awards, one of them was from the ALA. My conspiratorial brain is not working on that. The author of this book also boasted about writing this book in 11 days for a Twitter publishing contest on her Goodreads page, so you can see just how little care went into this book. That is just my opining on that because I have strong feelings about this. It was then published by Simon & Schuster, one of the big 4. So that shows just how little care actually goes into things that still get traditionally published if you know the right people or have the right politics or whatever happened to get this published. Since I very strongly believe in grading books on their individual merit and not on whether it's traditionally or indie published, or I will even get over the formatting or any errors and just read a story for what it is. I know, that's a lot to give in, but I want to find unique stories, original ideas, characters, and the drive, the heart that can be in stories that often gets washed out by commercialization. Not always, but it can be. And I also want to prove that traditional publishing is not just for incredible quality. But let me know what you think as you hear more about the story as we go through the story. I'm really looking forward to your comments. But before we get started, number 1, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number 2, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number 1 way to be featured is through lmfao, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story that includes that prompt, and on the first Monday of the month, we go through some of those prompts together because you guys are incredibly creative and I love seeing what you come up with. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the cover and the first chapter, they will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work and to go and get a taste for more of it. And the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they are linked down in the description below, and you can get them at any of your favorite places to find books, including the library if you request it with your librarian. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into this. The one note that I have for this is that I don't know how this book isn't satire or parody. If you go to the book page and look at the genre descriptors, satire and parody are not in there. And if you search the reviews, again, there is no mention of satire or parody. You'll see what I mean as we go, but let me know, again, what you think, because I had a hard time believing that this was real when I was reading it, especially for being not satire. So we open with, quote, "By day, I'm honors student at Jefferson Academy. At night, I turn into the Nubian goddess most people know as Emerald. Enter Kira, our main character genius programmer who made a massively popular 500,000 user VR Yu-Gi-Oh! Knockoff MMO RPG called Slay when she was only 15 years old and secretly maintains the server and the game away from her family, friends, and boyfriend. No one knows that she is the one and only dev that has worked on this, that works on maintaining the servers, that works on creation of anything, and that she is also somehow paying that bill for the servers." How? Well, our only assumption is based off of tutoring money, that she also somehow has the time to tutor, because it doesn't mention anything about selling the actual cards in game and making money off of that. So I have no idea how she maintains this all. Just magic. Not only is this a massive online RPG Yu-Gi-Oh knockoff, but it is also a game that is for exclusively black people. It's shared only via word of mouth to make sure that all of the players are only black. So somehow it's worldwide, massively well-known, enough to be 500,000 players. That is enough players to put it on the top 10 list of MMORPGs. It's not on Steam. And somehow, nobody, not even a single streamer at all, has broken into this, has heard of this, and then streamed it. Not even a black streamer has actually talked about this. Not even a black streamer letting one of his non-black friends know so that he didn't get in trouble. Like, nobody has mentioned this at all. It is just this huge worldwide kept secret. X'd out. The book starts out with Kira in school, waiting to get out and go home because the Tundra semifinals are tonight. That is a tournament in her class in an area that is Tundra. She's texting her only mod. That is right. She has a 500,000 user game and one mod. Magic. So she's texting her only mods named Cicada when her sister, Steph, and her friend, Harper, approach. Steph is described as, quote, Steph, walking toward me in her matching pink t-shirt with the Greek letters for Beta Beta Psi, a collective of 8 most outspoken, unapologetic, woke feminists at Jefferson Academy. Leave it to my parents to transfer us to a high school that prepares its students for college so thoroughly that they claim to have the most robust high school Greek life program in the country. Are there any high schools with Greek programs? Look, I was homeschooled, so I don't know, but I didn't think that there were Greek programs in high schools. Would somebody let me know? Anyway, that's Steph. Then we've got Harper, and she's a white girl who feels the need to immediately open this by asking Kira if she is allowed to wear dreadlocks. Yeah, you're gonna catch the point that most of this is like talking points from Twitter, and this is just the story of Twitter talking points. It doesn't sound like either Steph or Kira even like Harper when she mentions having the question, quote, Steph and I look at each other. We both know what's coming. Harper is about to ask me an impossible question because she knows that Steph isn't going to give her a straight answer. Harper only trusts Kira because it's a question that only a black person can answer, and Kira is pretty much the only black person at the school other than Steph and Kira's boyfriend. Kira is annoyed that anytime Harper has questions like this, she's the one that she comes to. Quote, I sigh and nod at her to ask the question already. She always prefaces these with a disclaimer that it's going to be one of those questions with 2 wrong answers. She didn't used to be like this. When we were kids, Harper used to come over to the house for Mario Kart, Legacy of Planets, and snacks. We used to talk about Usher and Fresh Prince and boys in our class and babysit her little brother Wyatt. But now Steph is student president of Beta Beta and Harper is VP, and as royalty of the most feminist high school sorority in the country, Harper acts like she has to talk about polarizing stuff all the time. When it comes to hair discussions, Steph and I have been on the black girl hair journey together, and we have more in common than she and Harper ever will in the hair department. But I look up at Harper with her short blonde pixie that hasn't held a curl since middle school prom, when her mother had to use half a can of hairspray. She's the only person I know who can rock a pixie like that, and since she stands about a foot taller than me with long willowy frame, it fits her. But I let her finish the question. Before Harper can get an answer in, Wyatt, Harper's brother, comes over. He works for the school paper and does a lot of clickbait articles. He asks Kira if he can interview her about the hair question. Quote, seriously, Kira, can I interview you about this? Wyatt asks with a big toothy grin. Even though he's only a junior, he's chief editor for the Jefferson Weekly, and he runs a political topics column like a criminal investigator, hyper-analyzing his interviewees' answers, looking for cracks in their views so that he can write them up with those clickbaity titles that he always uses. I can see it now. Black people don't mind white people wearing this one hairstyle. Steph volunteers to be interviewed, but since she's a debater, Wyatt doesn't really want to talk to her as an interviewee. This book also can't seem to go a line without referencing some sort of trope. Quote, you can interview me, offers Steph. And I can't help but smile a bit. There's no way that Wyatt's going to go for that. Steph is an expert debater who gives airtight answers to any questions you ask her. We all know what you think about white people doing things, Steph, says Wyatt. You tell us all the goddamn time. Steph punches him hard in the arm. He flinches and holds it close to him. Really? He asks. I mean, if you're going to assume that I'm going to be an angry black woman about this, I wouldn't want to disappoint you. Steph, I say, shaking my head. She's talking too loud in the hallway and people are looking at us. The last thing the only two black girls at Jefferson Academy need is to be seen as the loud ones. I just want to go home without having to answer Harper's question. I just want to log in, transform into Emerald, and talk to Cicada for the rest of the night. She's trying to get out of doing homework and studying with Harper, since that's what she kind of agreed to, but the semifinals are tonight, so she doesn't want to do it. And since she's the only developer and the only person that can work on the game, she needs to be there because every time she releases a new card, there are bugs that break the game, like, quote, "When I say I absolutely can't miss the Tundra semifinals today, I mean it. I need to be there. The game gets bugs sometimes. Weird stuff starts happening when people try to hack in coins or trade new weapons. Lately, characters have been glitching out when they use a new crossbow that was released last week, falling through the map or losing upgrades. And when that happens, everyone blows up my DMs. Why? Because I'm the game developer. Nobody knows, not even my family, not even my boyfriend, Malcolm." How a game with 500,000 users only has one dev who does all of the work after school is really a mystery to me. It feels like somebody that's heard the vague idea of video games but has never actually looked into how they exist, because this girl is doing the job of an entire company of video game creators. Before this can go any further, Kira's boyfriend Malcolm comes over, kissing her and calling her his black goddess. Wyatt, Steph, and Harper head out, and Malcolm complains that Kira is talking too white to appease the white people. Quote, "That's the only voice that you have when you're around those two people," he says, pointing down the hall at them. Then he pauses and his expression softens. "I love you. You know that. I want you to be yourself around me and around them. I want my black goddess all the time. But you out here sounding like you work in a call center." Kira then explains to us why her boyfriend doesn't know anything about her game. Quote, "I step up on my tiptoes and kiss him. Malcolm and I left Belmont together after freshman year and Steph joined us. I left so many of our black friends there, and I appreciate Malcolm doing his best to make sure that I don't leave my blackness there with them. If he knew about Slay, if he'd just give the game a chance, he might realize just how proud I am of us. But I can see the whole conversation now. He'd ask me why I poured so much effort into a video game where I can be focusing on college prep and getting a good job. So I don't join what he is constantly reminding me of, the mass of black people who waste their lives on video games, junk food, drugs, unemployment, baby daddy drama, and child support. According to him, the video games are a distraction promoted by white society to slowly erode the focus and ambition of black men. He wouldn't understand." Are we forgetting that, the origin of so many games and game design and in general being a Japanese thing, and that also people play video games across all racial categories, all nation categories that have access? Also, if she was making money off of this, which she should be for it being 500,000 users, she would already be in a pretty good position financially, right? If the game was successful, assuming that it is successful because it paints it as successful. So she should already be in a pretty great situation, right? You'd think? The more savvy side of the business gamers, let me know. It's also in reading this that I hope that Malcolm has zero hobbies, because this is what any hobby or interest does. Honestly, it reminds me of the churches that are more culty, that they say video games distract you from the time that you could be spending praying. And that's an argument that can be made about literally anything that is not praying. Also, immediately following the above, we learn that Kira's and Malcolm's parents are totally okay with them having sex, as if that's not something that you could end them up with some baby mama child support and drama issue. Quote, "Know about me coming over. I know it's in my head that I can't actually have him over to my house tonight, but the way he says it, I bite my lip and smile. Malcolm is fine as hell, and he knows I know it. We're lucky. His parents don't care about what he does or where he goes, and my parents don't mind giving us the privacy at the house, since they'd rather us be there than at some drunken party, as Mom puts it. Not sure what kinds of drunken parties she thinks that we're going to down at Jefferson. If people are throwing them, Malcolm and I are never invited." At least it's consistent in your conspiracy logic here. Since Kira has that tournament going on and can't spend time with Malcolm, she tells him that. And in response, we get, quote, "Fine, whatever. I've got some decolonizing to do anyway. It's called the 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene. You heard of it?" By decolonizing, he means reading. Knowing Malcolm, the book is written by a black man about black men getting their education, starting their own businesses, becoming the heads of households, and raising gorgeous little black children with their gorgeous black queens. Malcolm happily ever after. He'll stay up all night reading books like that. I can't complain about it, though. There's something sexy about a strong, stoic boy who reads a lot. But he only reads books by black men, black women who edify black men, and white men who reinforce his non-race-related philosophies, leaving me to keep my Klein and de Gwyn to myself. After he leaves, she thinks further about the issue of Malcolm never knowing about the game, quote, and he winks and turns away, shrinking farther and farther down the hall among the rest of the students clustered in groups to gossip before whatever after-school clubs they might have. I sigh, wishing so badly that I could invite him to the game with me. His attitude and curiosity would make him an expert dueler. I don't know if I'll ever convince him that Slay is different. To him, video games may be a distraction from becoming great, but I meant for it to do the exact opposite, to showcase how awesome we are as black people, how multifaceted, resilient, and colorful we are. And I've tried hypothetical questions with him, like, what if someone made a game that was just for black people, but he doesn't even entertain the idea? They make things just for us all the time. We've got black movies and Black History Month. They give us our own shit to distract us from the fact that we don't have control over their shit. Separate is not equal. That doesn't even come close to leveling the field. She heads home thinking about how she doesn't like living in the nicer neighborhood than before because white people ask her questions too often. Quote, I can't complain about the neighborhood. Bellevue, Washington is one of the cleanest cities that I've ever seen in real life or on TV. Perfectly manicured trees line every public sidewalk like they do on Disneyland. And I haven't seen a pothole since we moved here from Sodo. That's south downtown. 3 years ago when Dad got promoted. Lucky for me, it happened shortly after Malcolm got expelled, and I got to follow him out here to Jefferson, which I love and hate. I love that I can charge these kids $60 a session to tutor them in math. It's a nice addition to my resume, and it gives me some extra cash to spend on RAM, server maintenance, and in-game artwork. But I hate, and I mean hate, being the voice of blackness here. At Belmont, where 50% of the students are black and 70% are people of color, Malcolm and I got to be normal. Nobody was asking him about his lock, and nobody was asking us for permission to appropriate black culture as if we were the authorities for our entire race. I can't believe that she's making zero money on her video game, honestly. Zero income and somehow paying for it with this meager tutoring money. How does she have the time to tutor when she also has to be the only dev on this massively popular online game? So she gets home and excuses herself past her mom and her sister to go upstairs and play her game instead of helping to do the decorations. Though not without insulting Malcolm as some sort of extremist. Quote, you're expecting someone, maybe a certain someone, a certain Hotep whose name I won't mention. She calls Malcolm a Hotep, which in her mind is a brother who claims that he's for black power when he's really for black male power, homophobia, misogyny, and other regressive ideologies. I say as long as Malcolm is encouraging our people to do better, and me to do better, I can't complain, even if he says a few off-color things every so often. He may not get feminism all the way yet, but he's a work in progress. Through the conversation, we also learned that the word ain't belongs in Ebonics and only black Americans say it. Quote, don't use ain't in this house, says mom with a raised eyebrows. I said ain't in a card in the game, since Ebonics is part of what differentiates the American black experience from American other experiences. It's ours, and I'll use the word ain't however I please as long as I log in. And then there's this long rant about talking wrong and using different language in front of the right people. Quote, it's not that I don't get why she does it. She doesn't want us to walk into a job interview one day and say, hey, bruh, I ain't got much experience, but I'm gonna do what I gotta do to get the job done. You feel me, cuz? But Steph and I know how to alternate. It's like speaking two different languages. One when I'm home, FaceTiming Malcolm, and one when I'm at Jefferson, blending in. I can do both flawlessly, but some nagging fear in the back of my mom's mind thinks that if she doesn't snuff out the finna and the tomlabout and the ion, Steph and I will forever be unemployable, and every dime she spent on Jefferson will be down the drain. Then, for no reason other than to drop more lines about racist vernacular, Steph specifically brings attention to her glasses that she's wearing, which she specifically changed between 4 pages ago when she was at school and now that she's wearing new ones. The new ones are broken and kept together with scotch tape, and this horrifies their mother. Quote, "But scotch tape, Steph? Really?" she says. "You could find a nice pair on Amazon that doesn't look so..." Steph leans back against the chair and folds her arms over her chest, challenging Mom to finish the sentence. "Tacky," says Mom. I know that she's avoiding the word ghetto after Steph's lecture to the family last week about how ghetto is just a derogatory code word for innovative. "I just don't want those kids at Jefferson ostracizing you and your sister." Her sister is going to launch into another lecture about African American vernacular English, but Kira gets out of there before she does because she's got a game to attend. Now Kira explains what slay means. Quote, "When I log in, there are 641 new DMs in my slay inbox. That's the name of the game, slay. It's not an acronym, although that's always the first question of anyone who joins, and people have been offering suggestions for acronyms ever since its launch. It's a double entendre, meaning both to greatly impress and to annihilate. I thought the name was more than appropriate for a turn-based VR game where players go head-to-head in card duels using elements of Black culture. Steph would love it if she ever knew about it, or if she knew that I was the developer. But for all of the confidence I have in my sister, one thing she absolutely can't do is keep a secret. And on top of that, her constant jabs at Malcolm make me wonder if she'd get the game. There are players from all over the world, all walks of life, many who grew up poor like Malcolm, regularly decolonize like Malcolm, and surround themselves with the specific kind of Black influences like Malcolm. I don't know if I can share slay with her because I don't know if she'll accept it. All of it, not without overthinking it. So I won't. Probably not ever." So her sister will correct them on Black language and culture and stuff, but Kira is afraid of her sister judging her and rejecting her version of expression. But she's out here going, "I'm gonna be my true self with my boyfriend and my sister, totally fine, but also I'm going to hide the biggest parts of myself and what I find important because they'll judge me if they see it." I still don't understand how this is such a niche secret game with the player base and the goals that she has. There is just no way that this could happen in modern day, that nobody was streaming this game, that nobody has shared this with somebody that wasn't Black, that nobody had entered as a troll. Quote, "The textures are flawless, smooth and realistic. The snow looks fluffy up close. Every mountain looks hand-painted thanks to the donated art from a few indie artists who slay. I built the arena itself entirely out of diamonds because I could and because Diamond Arena in an icy region is hella dope. It's one of the biggest too. It can hold 3 million people since I hope one day the game gets that big. For now, chats read over 100,000 logged in people, about 500,000 people with slay accounts, which is still a lot for a single duel, even if it is the semifinals round of a tournament, but I guess that it's prime time for people my age to be online, at least here on the West Coast. Absolutely unbelievable." So her game is kind of broken, but she calls that a feature. It's outfits clipping through the ground or walls and the like. But you know, it explains that the stuff clips through the walls and your character and everything so that the character doesn't trip when walking upstairs. It made me wonder if the author of this book knew that you had to program the physics of clothing into games and it didn't automatically start out as clipping through everything. But not that it matters. It's not like gravity in video games is hard to do. Kira's out here as a prodigy doing all of the roles of a game developing company on her own at age 15 for a massively popular but secret MMORPG. Kira arrives at the stadium and admires the avatars around her, one of which is, quote, "I walk past the woman in bone armor and spot a character in a dark gray hooded robe that extends about 30 feet behind him. He's wielding a katana in each hand and has the words Justice for Trayvon written across the back of his robe in blood red. Not gonna lie, his outfit is pretty legit. When text on clothing was enabled, I wrote emerald down the leg from a lime green jumpsuit I had stuffed in the back of my inventory. The text was impossible to line up with various articles of clothing, so I ended up giving up on the function, and now I'm wishing that I'd written something meaningful instead of my name because it'll be a while before I have the time to sort that feature out again. This place is called the Fairbanks Arena, and the sky looks like the Aurora Borealis. Kira makes her avatar huge so that everyone can see when she has arrived, not because she is a narcissist. She enters the arena admiring all of the avatars. Quote, "I can't stop looking around. Everyone has configured their character to be different shades, from Zendaya to Lupita, and I am living for it. Their forehead, jewelry, and face paint, feathers, flowers, beads, glitters, afros the size of small vehicles, and braids as long and thick as pythons. I spot dashikis, Mercy lip plates, Ojisi clay, Uluwaluko blankets, Marley twists, Michael Jackson glove, and a man in a purple cape twice as tall as me in the front row who's trying a little too hard to be Prince. And this splendor, this orchestra of black magnificence extends all the way up to the ceiling beyond my vision. Steph could cry tears of joy if she could see this." Kira is entirely satisfied that she controls the room, is bigger than everyone else, can raise her hands and the room goes silent. She introduces the battlers for the night, Zama and Presto Box. The whole thing is very cultish in the presentation. She also can't use a mic because she's afraid that people in her house will hear her talking, so she just types everything into the typing box. As Zama enters, it calls the other players her worshippers for cheering her on. This video game, the more it went on, it definitely felt like a cult. Kira was the leader, and then some of the players that were the higher ranking in the tournament felt like the priests of it. Suddenly, the secrecy from her family makes sense when she doesn't want people to know that she runs a cult. Zama is introduced as a very athletic, amazing woman who is worshipped by her fan base, while Presto Box is kind of sleazy, rolls in the shadows underneath Kira's skirt, and appears with a Guy Fawkes mask, a Zorro hat, and is described as looking like No-Face from Spirited Away. She describes how Presto has a very special ability that is impossible to get, and how everyone was confused when they first saw it. They didn't think that it was real. And somehow this book doesn't acknowledge that gamers write game guides so that everyone knows how to do things the second that one person has discovered it. Also, if you watch any gamer testing content, as soon as a new game comes out or even an alpha version of something comes out, gamers are trying to break it. Like, deliberately. So that they can go and do write-ups on how to break the game. From the way that this is all set up, there's no way that this game is played by 500,000 users, and then there are no game guides, YouTube videos, or streamers that have covered this content at all. After the characters have made their entrance onto the stage, Kira continues her emceeing. Quote, "Kings and queens, you know the drill. We are here first and foremost to celebrate Black excellence in all of its forms from all parts of the globe. We are different ages, genders, tribes, tongues, and traditions, but tonight we are all Black, and tonight we all slay." Tell me another game that is 1, this big, 2, the dev comes in to like announce to this extent, and then 3, the group of it is actually this culty. Like, I am not the most widespread, especially MMORPGer. I mostly play with my friends or in single player games like I've been doing on a couple of nights. But this doesn't feel like a game. It feels like an online cult. Anyway, this is also the semifinals of this card tournament, whatever, and she explains how the game works. Go watch some esports. This is not how any of them work as far as I have seen. The duel then begins. Zama, of course, the duel begins, Zama wins, but not without us first seeing the showdown of the innovation card, the representation card, and the hustle card, which basically makes the whole game invalid since it wipes out half of the opponent's points at the point at which it's used. How is she even typing on a keyboard while wearing VR gloves and standing up in her room? Like, what is the point of this? So remember, everything that Kira says is said via keyboard because she doesn't feel comfortable to use a microphone. Now tell me, how is she typing on a keyboard while wearing VR gloves and standing in her room? Is she wearing a keyboard like a Yu-Gi-Oh card tray on her arm and just doing this number? She also repeats the rules of the game again and basically says, no cheating, guys. Bro, this is a semifinals match. I don't think anybody here has gotten here because they're cheating, and if they did, they're not going to stop cheating just because you're like... Especially if this is standard fare for like doing these tournament matches. Like, does she need to be at every tournament match and seeing them all, or just the semifinals and the finals? Because she only has one other mod. So like, does Cicada do those others that she can't make it to? Do people find other people to MC for them or to be the referee for them? Like, how does this work? Kira is also so full of herself while she's doing this, mind you. Quote, I gasp and realize that I'm clenching my fist, and then I take a deep breath and remind myself that none of this is real and that Presto isn't really hurt and that my animations are just that realistic. As the game goes off, Kira's mom calls her and goes, "You better be doing your homework in there." Her mom was literally trying to get her to do decorations earlier, but now her mom is very concerned about her doing homework. Can she just pick a lane? She asks Cicada, her only mod, to watch the rest of the game, because that's all Cicada does apparently. There is no need for any other mods to do any other things. Anyway, her mom is calling her for dinner and not waiting any longer because she is not gonna let Kira get out of listening to the sister go over the AAVE lecture. If she has to listen to it, so does the daughter. The end. Chapter 2 is dinner with the family, and it's fun. Quote, Steph is talking to us again, this time recalling a debate that she had with Holly Little, the treasurer of Beta Beta, about Martin Luther King. I love my little sister, I really do, but she could talk about Dr. King for hours if we let her. Literally hours. There are few things that I'd like less than to listen to that right now. Kira asks Steph if she's ever even read anything that Martin Luther King wrote because she doesn't think that she has. She thinks that her sister has a misunderstanding of who MLK was, quote. And so then, Steph asks around a mouthful of rice, I asked Holly if she'd ever actually read anything by MLK, like really read it, because if she had read MLK, then she'd know that he wasn't some patron saint of complacency like she was insinuating, and that he made it clear that there were times and places for a revolt. So then Holly asked me if I was advocating for destruction of infrastructure, like when black people start looting stores after an unarmed black person is killed and their killer is acquitted. And do you know what I asked her? Before any of us has a chance to guess, she's answering her own question. I asked her if she thinks that it's worse than when white people loot stores after their team loses a big game. This book is literally just Twitter talking point after Twitter talking point. Is that why it won a contest for publishing? Did it win a contest for publishing? Or was that just, it got published again? It got published afterwards by somebody else. I don't know what the publishing history is of this. I just know that it said that that was what it was written for. Then Kira goes into talking about the stereotypes around fried chicken. Quote, my mom managed to refine the concept of baked poultry, and one day I hope to learn how she does it. Auntie Tina can do it too. Granny could make it. In fact, I'm sitting here realizing that every woman in my family knows how to make the chicken but me, and I'm hoping that it's a genetic, and one day I'll just know how to make it. I've considered adding some kind of chicken-related sleigh card to the game, maybe as a hex card, because I swear it's like a drug. But people would riot. I can hear it now. Chicken isn't necessarily a black thing. Some of us are vegetarians. All this talk of black excellence, and you reduce us to a chicken trope? Can we just agree that everybody likes fried chicken? And the people that don't eat fried chicken want fried fake chicken. Because it's delicious. Steph mentions that a new black girl is joining the sorority and she is so excited. Everyone is apparently home early because mom is coming out with a letter from the college Spellman for Kira, and she brings that letter to Kira like it's a newborn babe in her arms. Kira is thinking now about the night that she talked to her boyfriend about school, and he said, quote, any non-HBCU would be a continuation of Jefferson. And then when I smiled at him, because I totally feel him on that assessment, he reached up and brushed my cheek and said, if I can't learn around my people, I can't really learn, and pulled me close and kissed me. Of course, Kira gets into Spellman. I don't know how she wouldn't, because she's obviously a genius. Her family is celebrating while she's thinking, why am I not happy about this? Everyone is more happy about it than me. Steph also takes a moment to say that she's planning to go to Spellman too because she's, quote, down for the cause. And apparently the only way for her to succeed is to go to a historically black university. Kira goes on to say that despite how she had to hide their game from Malcolm, he is the love of her life and the only person that she feels like she can be herself around. That's why she's so happy to go to Spellman. Also, quote, second, I'm sick of white people. Actually, that's not true. I love all people. I'm sick and tired of being the only black girl among all white people. I want to be around people who understand me and don't expect me to answer asinine questions every day. Steph and I, as the only black girls at Jefferson, are the be-all end-all authority on all things related to black culture. Steph's popularity attracts inquiring minds, and since she only answers ridiculous questions with ridiculous answers, as she puts it, they flock to me as a second resort. This book / Kira also believes that everyone who's black shares the exact same culture. Quote, I told her because I didn't know and I'm not native and therefore unqualified to answer that question. She became increasingly insistent that I was the only one who could provide credible input into her outfit because she needed the opinion of a person of color, and she didn't want to talk to only Native American kid at Jefferson because she didn't know that person. And she didn't want to talk to the only Native American kid at Jefferson because she didn't know him that well. And then she asked me why the phrase person of color is okay but not colored person. I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is, she said, as if she expects me to just know how to define the terms that generalize my culture history generations back. In Slay, all I have to do is explain to people is how the game works. I don't have to explain the cards. If you play the game, you understand all the time. I've imagined a similar world at Spellman. Asinine. This is asinine. There are 54 countries in Africa, and this wants me to not only pretend that they have the same culture, but they have the same cultural history with those in other continents? I have a different understanding, which is not great, apparently, of my genealogical cultural background as compared to like where I actually live in the cultural background of the country that I grew up in. Kira sort of learned that they have different cultures, you know, within micro groups of people, sort of, kind of, when she tried to release a new card into her game. Quote, the last time Cicada and I launched new cards, we tried to give everyone a voice in the poll. We put 50 card options on the board and asked chat to voice the top 20 results. The comment section blew up immediately. Everyone had an opinion. Every card on the board was anti-progress or tropey or cheesy or insulting or boring or inapplicable to everyone. I've always tried to choose concepts that edify all of us, but it's getting harder and harder to think of things every single one of us can relate to. People in Kenya may not identify with a good old-fashioned Tennessee barbecue. People in the US may not understand the nuances of the Olwoluko ceremony. And when you have to memorize 6 cards in 10 seconds, the less you have to Google, the better. Characters were fighting and nobody was voting, and I got so fed up that I pulled the whole thing, picked my own favorite card, and posted a message in the next update that read, "We are a diaspora. We span hundreds of shades, religions, traditions, and cultural nuances. If you don't understand what some of these cards mean, blame the slave trade." It looks like she thinks that every single black person in this should have the exact same culture, if not for the slave trade. And if the slave trade is to blame for black culture in North America, then why is she using so many American cultural references in her game? Steph catches up just to talk about Harper and Holly, asking her to translate some rap songs because we want to talk about this again. Quote, I mean, come on, she continues. And then I go to thinking how racist the word ebonics is. Well, maybe not racist, but marginalizing, othering. I mean, if I claimed everybody on The Office was speaking Whitenese, they'd feel pretty called out. But somehow we need our own language. Asking it to be called something dignified like African American vernacular English is the least that can be done. I don't understand why Steph and Kira don't just stop being friends with people that they clearly don't like being around, whom they clearly consider annoying. No one is forcing you to be friends with Harper or any of these people. Steph can just be vice president and president with Harper, but you don't have to spend extra time with her. Kira says that she can't tell her sister about the game because she'd log on and police everyone's language in regards to the AAVE. I mean, I'm kind of wondering how this would be a problem unless the majority of the user base is actually African American. Because black people from other countries are not necessarily going to speak African American vernacular English, right? That's at least my assumption because it's called African American, which means it comes from America, right? Or am I just dumb? Which I accept I may just be dumb. Anyway, Steph would apparently get on and immediately start policing how literally everyone talks to make them talk right, and that would destroy Kira's reputation since Steph is her sister. So she just obviously can't tell her sister about the game. This is then when we learn about the card Hustle that steals 50% of all of your opponent's points, basically making it an instant win card. I can't believe that Kira is actually complaining that the semi-finalists use this card, which is an OP card in the game, when she's literally the one who put the card in there. And of course, a professional is going to use the best card that they have at their disposal when they're given that card. Like, why would they not use that card in their deck? Why would they not use that card if it was given to them? It doesn't matter if it's a semi-finalist game. They're professionals. They're going to be the bloodthirstiest of the bloodthirsty gamers that are going to be the most merciless that they can be to win the tournament, right? The brutality of actual gamers that get into the online stuff is one of the reasons why I don't really play online with random people, because I'm not that competitive, and I understand just how competitive online games can be. Professionals win using strategy and skills like this. And Kira's then raging about a card when she is the one and only person with the ability to put cards into games. Kira continues talking to Steph about the HBCUs, saying that Steph might like Malcolm because the two of them have the same opinions on colleges, and Steph says, quote, "Oh, I'm sure," she says, smoothing the last visible smears of cream onto her eyebrows. "Let me guess, he thinks HBCUs are the only way to go because," she dons her mockingly deep Malcolm imitation voice, "that's how we black folk would have been learning before the white man got a hold of us and colonized our minds." Steph then corrects Kira that no, she doesn't get along with Malcolm because they believe the same things. Quote, "I stand by what I said. He thinks HBCUs are the way to go because he wants to live in this fantasy world where white people don't exist. I, the realist, think HBCUs are the way to go because they give funding and opportunity to black prodigies worldwide and because we need to take care of our own. I said I'm always mad at Malcolm and I meant it, mostly because I don't entertain illogical conspiracy theories or believe straight men are the center of the universe, and I don't trust a man with ashy ankles." Kira then goes to her room and can't decide whether or not that she wants to tell Malcolm that she got into Spellman at that moment because she doesn't really want to talk to Malcolm. Her head's distracted. Kira, the lover of all humans and absolutely not the hater of some based on race, says, quote, "If I tell him, he'll want to talk tonight about how excited I am to be going to one of the most prestigious historically black colleges in the country, about how grateful I am to be going to the college that a sweet relief from the burden of being Jefferson's resident black culture consultant. But I don't feel any of that. Not right now. Maybe it hasn't hit me yet, the weight of it. Maybe it's like finding out that you've been crowned homecoming queen. Maybe the bliss won't sink in until I'm up there on stage at my high school graduation in a cap and gown, and the principal is announcing all of these kids and parents that the first black girl to graduate Jefferson is going to study among her own people now because she has done her time and deserves some reprieve." She resolves not to talk to Malcolm tonight at this moment and text him in the morning or something instead. She thinks about when the semifinals in the desert are going to go down and messages Cicada, the other mod that she has, who actually lives in France. Then we switch over to the perspective of Cicada, whose name is also Claire. She opens by talking about how excited she is to see Spade face off against Anubis in the desert arena. She also goes on about how much she loves Zama. She thinks about how she has a 3-hour math test later today and she needs to make sure to come back in time for the game. I'm not sure why the game runs specifically on African time zones when neither the mod or the dev actually live in Africa, nor do they seem to want to be there. She talks about the player Anubis thinking that she's flirting with him by wearing a skirt, and how she almost picked a name that was derivative of Anubis but didn't want him to think that she was flirting with him. She uses her VR gloves to pick up her tea kettle because it's hot. I'm not sure why this was the choice, but I guess VR gloves aren't really that expensive. She judges the neighbor. We don't really have much world building in this, mind you. We don't know if this is in the future, how far in the future, what kind of technology is normal, but they've all got VR gloves. She judges her neighbors for being tourists and having sex out on the balcony, and she also expects people to say things to her because she's black and ask her questions about Africa. This also just feels like another American, actually, and not a Parisian as she claims to be. And you know what? Cicada knows that Kira is American and thinks that that is so cool. She also says she wants to go to the promised land in the future. Quote, "California must be lovely, with the sun always shining, always something to do, and so many people. Most importantly, so many black people. I imagine it's like a real-life slay world where everyone has special powers. Los Angeles is full of so many stars and starlets, so many incredible people of color. I want to go there one day. I want to talk to them, to know what it is like to be famous. To know what it's like to be famous." We also learn that Cicada is pretty dang rich, but she can't travel right now because her mom is sick, and so she has no travel money. She also talks to Kira about the battle between Presto and Zama, while Kira continues to complain about the gameplay choices that she has designed, i.e. the hustle card. She also doesn't like that Presto used the weave card after Zama used the Presto card, when she is the one that designed all of this stuff. Oh, but I don't like you using these things. Either fix your game, remove the cards, or stop. You have no room to complain when you are the sole dev that makes all of the decisions. Cicada summarizes the whole rest of the card game just to explain more cards to the reader. And they also bet that Anubis is going to win the fight. He's also stacked with so much cash. He's also stacked in the game with so much cash. It's got Kira's attention. She doesn't think about checking the game's logs though, because despite her, being the dev who can check that sort of thing in the background, and she has access to that sort of information, it's not even an option. They also wonder why he might even want to be in the tournament when he has so much money. Apparently, she and Sakata can't even fathom that someone might just want to play the game and duel the best players in the game when they're already at the top of the game. Kira rather thinks that Anubis wants to overthrow her, as if that's even a thing that you can do in a video game like this. Yeah, just overthrow the dev by winning a duel that she's not involved in. That's a thing. Since Anubis has a bunch of money, she's considering changing the economics in the game to be more expensive to make him spend some of his money. I mean, like, screw all those poros over there. Make this guy lose all of his money. That's a great way to kill your game. Just show them that if the characters get too much money, you're going to steal all the money and change the rules of the game. Sakata heads off to school and thinks about how she and Kira are basically goddesses because she's a mod and Kira built the game, and this is a red flag to me. On her way to school, she takes a train and a lady won't let her sit down next to her, and some random dude asks her where she's from since she doesn't look like she's from Paris. Back over to Kira, and she's done with her typing test, which is called a keyboard exam in this. It is in senior year, and Harper says that it is so incredibly hard. And I'm like, how is typing hard in your senior year of high school? Have you just not been doing typing at all in your 18 years? I remember taking Mario Teaches Typing in grade school, like 8 or 9, like when I first started doing anything. You've got technology like VR gloves and completely realistic VR, but you're not trained in just using keyboard until senior year. They leave the class with her complaining about how hard typing is when Wyatt shows up and asks about that interview that Kira said that she would give him. Kira doesn't want to do it and ignores it the best that she can, and then they go to lunch where Malcolm joins them. Kira had plans to duel Sakata, but decides to help tutor Harper instead and puts the gaming on the back burner. She's bummed because she just wanted to be normal and have fun for once in her own game, but she can't do that at Jefferson since white people ruin everything. Sakata texts Kira saying that Anubis isn't online for the battle that he's supposed to be a part of, and she's worried. Kira's like, people are gonna be mad if there is no game. Meanwhile, Malcolm's about to lose it over Wyatt for saying that in some cases white people wear dreads is better than black people wearing dreads. Kira walks away with her boyfriend and tells Sakata to just reschedule the match. Texting that she's doing gets Malcolm's attention and he asks her who she's talking to. She thinks she can't tell him because it's related to her online game. Yeah, you've got that right. Kira's over here saying that she can be her real self with Malcolm while lying to him more than anyone else in this book. Also, she says, quote, the first question he'd ask about her is whether she's black. If I say that she is, he'll ask questions like, how did we meet? And can I meet her? And what are her opinions on X, Y, and Z? If I lie and say that she's not, he'll ask questions like, why in the world are you friends with her? And every time I pull out my phone, why are you talking to her instead of me? Although more subtly and more likely, so's that your new white friend? Malcolm is so bad. We learn a little bit more about Malcolm's personality. Quote, Malcolm does little else unless I'm over. He's rarely on social media because he says that it lets the government track our whereabouts, and he calls TVs propaganda machines. He's a weirdo, but I love him. And he's not a conspiracy theorist, as Steph says. He just contains weird theories sometimes. He's open-minded. Is he, though? Is he? I think you coping a little bit, Kira. Kira gets into it with Malcolm because she says her sister is interested in this guy named Matt at church. Malcolm says that doesn't sound like a black name. Kira says that Matt's brown, but does it matter? Malcolm says, quote, hell yeah, it matters. He says, leaning forward on the table and lifting his snap back to reveal his eyes. I can feel him looking at me, and I try to focus on my salad, but the silence chips away at my resolve, and eventually I'm looking at him. That's exactly what the world wants, babe. They want to divide us. They want to break us up. The whole white world is after the black nuclear family. Black kings out here with their Latinas and Asian women saying that they don't date black women, and black queens are out there deserting their kings for white dudes, and the media encourages it. That's all you see in the movies anymore. Oh, look at this black queen defying all odds and going to get her white man, implying you can too. It's sad. Malcolm proclaims that you cannot be for black people if you are black, but not dating black. Kiara pushes back, saying, quote, yes, there are black men out there who are dating non-black women and vice versa, but that doesn't necessarily mean they hate them. You can be black and date outside of your race and advocate for everybody black. Malcolm asks if Kiara would ever date a white boy, and she thinks, would I? Could I? They don't understand me, no, never. The fight ends with Kiera thinking, quote, at least I don't have to worry about dating. At the rate Malcolm and I are going, we'll end up in Atlanta together, married one day with our little black baby, and I won't have to think about dating outside of my race or betraying my people. It's what I want more than anything. It's what I've always wanted. They're apparently playing the news on the TVs in the lunchroom at school, and apparently their wars in Africa aren't actually real. They're a conspiracy theory created by the United States government to stop people from becoming as powerful as their online characters. Quote, more people are getting killed in Africa. Malcolm says that I shouldn't be shocked anymore how often the U.S. news networks feel the need to remind black people how much worse we would have had it if we stayed in Africa, which is, of course, bullshit. He thinks that it's the establishment's way of driving home the idea that we should be grateful for what we have. It's their way of keeping us submissive in America. I tend to think it's a way to keep us from unifying across the diaspora and becoming as powerful in real life as our Slay characters. There's also a banner at the bottom about a boy who was shot in his sleep over a video game, and Kiera assumes that it's her Nemesis video game title, but really that kid died because of beef in Slay. It turns out the dead player was running a hustle with his game character and trying to extort real money from other characters. Guilt and fear flush through Kiera and she runs off. Malcolm is like, you better not be pregnant. Why don't you just not have sex premaritally if you're not ready for kids? Like, that is an option. She feels so bad about this that she skips class and she tells Cicada to cancel the semifinals match because Anubis is dead. Kiera is feeling guilty and considering what she could have done to stop this from happening. She reflects on how this one time when she was trying to play Legacy of Planets, she made this dark-skinned dwarf character and someone whipped out the gamer word at her and ruined her life. She told nobody that it happened. Like, it ruined her life. She shut everything down, didn't go back for a while, told nobody about it happening. She kept then trying to play this game because who doesn't love fantasy? But even when she was a snow-skinned elf, she saw hordes of characters with red armbands stomping around hunting dwarves. Are you really gonna tell me that there are Nazi elves walking around in Legacy of Planets? Nothing good. There was, in all of her gaming experiences, regardless of whatever game she tried to play, all of them were bad. Trolls got away with it. Quote, even when I played as an elven princess with snow white skin, I'd encountered parties in the woods with red armbands threatening to lynch the dwarves, the only dark-skinned characters in the game. Behaviors like that go unregulated, and I can't blame the developers. With a game as big as Legacy, with millions of players worldwide, it's impossible to police the words exchanged between characters. The most that they can do is encourage users to report abusive behaviors. But by the time anything happens to the trolls, they have either vanished or created a new account altogether. And this problem isn't just in Legacy of Planets. It's symptomatic of the whole online multiplayer universe. So apparently everybody in online gaming is a racist except for Kiara. Every game that she tried was just as bad an experience as the first one, so she created Emerald, her character, as a Twitter account and then started sending links to this forum called Slay to all of the black people that she knew. Cicada also blames herself for what happened to Anubis and completely ignores that Anubis was scamming people, which is why he got shot. Cicada brings her character to meet Kiera and introduces herself, saying that she wants to know more and be more personable because things like this happening show her that she needs to not miss out on making friends. Kiera is nervous about this because she's like, what if I'm actually talking to a serial killer right now? What if Cicada's actually fake? Cicada says that she has something that she really wants to say, but in the conversation is interrupted by Harper coming over and Kiara is really annoyed. Wyatt also is here to interview Kiara for the school newspaper, and they bring up how they were talking about the Slay murder, and Kiara is blaming herself still, as if he wouldn't be scamming in a different game if it was not in Slay, or possibly he was scamming in multiple things. Let's be real. Wyatt says, oh, you mean that kid killed from that racist video game? And Kiara about loses it now and demands that Wyatt explain himself. He says that it discriminates against anyone who is not black, so it's racist, and Kiara and Steph just smirk and say that it's not. Then Steph walks to the center of the room and prepares to make her speech. Quote, I want you to imagine for a minute, I know it's going to be hard for you both, but just imagine that literally nothing was made for you. Your parents were denied a house because of your skin color. Your grandparents were sprayed with fire hoses and ripped apart by dogs in the street, and your great-grandparents were housemaids, mammies, and barely paid entertainers, and your great-great-grandparents were slaves. Every movie in your life is majority black, and all of the characters in your favorite books have been cast darker in the movie adaptations for no reason, and every mistake you make is because of your skin color and because of your background and because of the music that you listen to. You are the only white kids at your school of 500 blacks, and every black person at the school asks you to weigh in on what it's like to be white or what white people think about this or that. It's not fun. I've lived my entire life like this. Kiara has lived her entire life like this. If black gamers want their own space online away from the eyes of the majority, let them have it. Y'all have Mummy and Legacy of Planets. Do you have to have everything? This is not really an argument against discrimination, but an argument for exclusivity. The four of them then argue about what exclusivity means, and that Legacy is racist because you can only be darker if you're a dwarf. Wyatt says a free country means that no one is excluded, and the statement is not correct, but they're all teenagers, so I at least accept their ability to be wrong. We also get to hear them arguing that European history is universal, while anything else is and apparently should be exclusive and not shared. She also says, quote, a game set in one country in Africa. Our mistake for asking that black people, 12% of the American population, get a little more than that. Maybe something about what it's like to be black in America, specifically what it's like to be black in America if you're not dealing drugs, soliciting sex, or breaking out of prison. I thought this whole thing, Slay, was actually just a fantasy game about the mythology and history and culture of not specifically being American, but of the black diaspora, or in general, like African culture. But this is then saying that it is specifically American culture. So then is that 500,000 players, all of America / Europe because you have Cicada? Everyone separates from this argument angry, and Kiara's DMs are blowing up. I'm wondering where the forum is for this. They should be blowing up in the forums because there also was a Slay forums before. So maybe that's where this discussion should have been, aside from Kiara's DMs. She also sees a DM from some guy named Q Diamond who says you want to battle. She says yes because she wants a break from all of the drama, and he says everything that she wants to hear. Quote, it melts me. The you've gotten us through a lot part, and the us part. Who is us exactly? I know they're probably talking about everyone who slays, but I hope they don't also mean us as in the black community. My throat closes at the thought. I'm just a game developer. I'm no pioneer. As she's getting ready to go and fight this random guy in the Beyonce Bayou, Malcolm texts and he says he better not find out that she plays this shit, and she thinks about everything that she could lose if he does find out who she really is. The POV then switches to some kid named Jalen who lives in New Orleans, who says that he is about to duel his celebrity crush. Not gonna lie, this player is coming off as a really creepy stalker, pretty dang immediately. It turns out that this character is also trans. Jalen then wins the battle and cries about how she finally has a place to express herself when she hears her name being called. Mom comes in and yells at Jalen from being on the computer, looking at naked girls. She also breaks Jalen's computer in that moment. You let me catch you doing that again and I'll beat the loving God into you, she says. Quote, I scream for Emerald, for Q Diamond, and for me. I know when I'll be able to tell my parents who I really am, when they're dead. So this was a really alarming moment, and it seems like Jalen is about to murder her parents. But that's just the vibe that I get. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Otherwise, Jalen never comes back. There's like one section later where Kiara references Q Diamond sitting in the stands of a battle or something. But otherwise, Q Diamond's not there. So we don't even know if that is actually Q Diamond, or if Q Diamond is arrested, or if Q Diamond is, you know, like naked and bloody and sitting in the basement on her parents' computer that she has now procured because she's murdered her family. But that is a really sketchy way to end that section and then have zero follow-up. Like, really? Also, there was no purpose to this random chapter. Switch back over to Kiara's point of view, and she wakes up the next morning to Cicada sending her a YouTube video of the news talking about her game, asking if it's racist. And we're also told that the game is like Tokyo, the Japanese game of monsters and card dueling. Yet, also, it's somehow very violent. Yeah, don't worry. I don't expect the news to get anything right about video games because the news has been reporting video games incorrectly for like 30 years. But also, girl, Tokyo, really? You've named other real people, but you couldn't actually just say that the game that this is inspired by is Yu-Gi-Oh? Because we've got real-world elements in this already, like Michael Jackson and Prince and others that have been mentioned. Somehow, this is still wanting to demonize the other game with, oh, so maybe we exclude people, but it's not like black kids aren't being abused on Legacy of Planets all the time. Girl, MMOs can be brutal. Anything that is an online game can actually be really brutal. Just calm down and say that you wanted a safer space. The white newscaster on the screen are asking questions about the game, while the black doctor they have on there is low-key defending the game. Quote, I make a fist and mouth the words yes as I silently am rooting for Dr. Abbott. He may not slay, but at least he's looking at this situation with some damn common sense. Let's go with the isolated incident theory and wait until white people forget about this so that we can go back to our Nubian realness and peace. The newscaster Jane says, quote, there have been several cases like this all over the state of Washington. We've been getting emails since this morning when Jamal Rice was murdered, bringing to light his underground community. This is the boy in Kansas City who was caught in the crossfire of a disagreement between two friends over the ownership of coins in the game. According to his brother, Jamal's tribe of 3 pooled their coins into Jamal's account so that they could buy every single Slay card in the game. But Jamal changed his mind in the middle of the deal and held the coins for ransom in exchange for real US dollars, and that's when things went sour. Derek, we've got tribes and we've got coins, and now we've got a murder. This is sounding more and more like an underground internet gang, and this violent game is excluding white players on the basis of race. I just don't know how you can entertain the argument that this isn't racist. This is literally a nonsensical conclusion to make, but again, the news has been incorrectly reporting on video games for a very long time. Dr. Abbott argues with the newscasters, saying that this isn't a case of thuggery, this is a case of gaming while black. Another player attacked him for holding coins ransom on an account that they were all sharing. My guy, he was just a bad person. Bro had a beef with his buddy over stolen internet coins, that's it. Quote, I think the factor that we're missing here is the lens of gaming while black. When I was a young man, I used to play video games. Sometimes I watched my nephews play Legacy of Planets, and the number of times I heard explicitives hurled at them would make you sick. The number of times I heard the N-word aimed at them, their 6 and 8-year-olds, should make you angry. I think what we're missing is the understanding that the world of online gaming is naturally cruel, naturally dog-eat-dog, very exclusive, and in some cases hostile towards people of color. You're making this into something that it's not. The demonization of people for intentions not there because literally it's all black people in the game, and yet somehow it's still the dangers of gaming while black. Or is this just saying that making a game exclusive is fine because gamer words exist? Bro, everyone gets gamer worded every now and then. If you're playing an online game, your race, I don't think literally matters most of the time, because people just say words that they think are going to piss you off. Also, how young are your nephews that you are allowing them to play these online games that make you click a box that says you're at least 13 years old? Bro, there are predators. I remember playing Inklink on shockwave.com where people would send me DMs and try to have cyber sex with me while I was like 11 years old. Why are you letting these nephews play these massive online things knowing that this is what they are like? Then Kiara actually gets mad at Dr. Abbott for his all lives mattering in his statement. Quote, as for the question of if the game is racist, we absolutely cannot solve this problem with more division in the gaming community. What we need right now is the unity and constructive discourse to develop a solution that doesn't exclude anyone, especially on the basis of race. This man is really trying to all lives matter my game. I want to click the home screen. I feel like I can't watch any more of this without popping a blood vessel, but I remember that I'm listening for them to talk about me, Emerald, so I sit back down on my sofa and kick my feet up onto the poof. Despite everything, the two white newscasters just keep pushing that it's offensive, blah blah blah, because who needs nuance when all white players are bad, blah blah blah, and they're offended that no one knows who the developer is. Kiara is scared about being sued, so she's gonna go and lawyer up and see what a lawyer says about the situation. Switch to a new random character perspective named John. This is the uncle of some kids and the guy from the news show, you know, John Abbott. Another chapter starting off with the my name is and a news character that isn't going to matter after this chapter. So John is watching his nephews play Legacy of Planets in VR because it's just more fun that way and it's too complicated for him to play, so he only watches. Then at some point they stopped playing Legacy of Planets and started playing Slay. He regrets letting them make an account for this new game. They are both 8 and 6 years old. Is there no age cutoff on this game, again, for a massive online multiplayer game. And then he's talking about their mother, quote, "I see the disappointment in her eyes. I would love to sit here and tell her that this thing her children have fallen in love with is something that she can write off as safe, that she isn't releasing her 6 and 8-year-old sons into the cruel arms of interactive gaming, that they won't be parented by other players. But as long as she's gone most of the day, leaving them to spend their free time however they please, from the time school gets out until almost bedtime, she's given the control to whatever and whoever is in that game." So John sees this and sees no problem with it, so he is just fine with it. Then we get, quote, "Jamal Rice," she says. "That photo they keep showing of him playing ping pong, he looks just like Asher. Just look at him. He was only a baby, and someone shot him dead in his sleep." A tear falls from her face and lands very close to the spot on the counter I'm staring at. I shut my eyes and remember my words in the interview. John says, quote, "They're little men, little black men growing up down the street from Harvard University and MIT. They have every opportunity before them if they want it and if they seize it. Should they be allowed to play online multiplayer games? I don't know. Should they be allowed to access safe spaces? Should they choose to play online multiplayer games? Absolutely. How about not when they're single digits? Like, that's a choice. How about that? Uncle hears that the kids are talking about Louis Armstrong and not knowing who he is, so he steps in to play with them and learn about the game. Here we also learn more bogus things about the game. Quote, "You can't hunt in Slay. You have to wait until animals die on their own. Usually another animal will take them down if you wait long enough. The bone axe and elephant tusk are super rare. So you harvest items from animals, but you can't actually kill animals in Slay, because everybody has to be a pacifist in Slay. Except when you're fighting another human, then you're allowed to duel people." Also, what are the weapons for when you are literally doing card battles and you can't kill anything? Are they just decoration, crafting? That's it? John is excited about this game having black culture all over it, and he receives a challenge from Spade, and the kids are like, "Ooh, fight him! He is a celebrity!" So you've got like celebrity high-level gamers going in here and challenging the children that have like no items and no money. After that chapter, which again doesn't turn into anything, it's literally just a glimpse into that guy's life for no reason, we switch over to Kiara visiting a lawyer now. She thinks more about the news articles that are saying the one word that bothers her. Quote, "Silent," it says. "That word is a knife in my stomach. I quoted Ellie Weasel in my Boston University essay, and it's coming back with a vengeance like a bad case of heartburn. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." Malcolm texts her about never answering if she plays that stupid game, and then calls her a liar from her answer. It turns out that Malcolm condemns video games because he used to be addicted to, guess what it is? Mario Party 2. At the lawyer's office, the receptionist is nice to Kiara, despite her giving the name Wakandria. At this point, I feel like it's important to note that the author also says this book was inspired by Ready Player One and Black Panther, so of course her name was going to be Wakandria. The author also has worked on some Marvel properties. She's thinking in circles about this one kid died and this other person is wearing a rainbow mask and could be themselves. Is it worth a trade? Was the trade worth it for people to express themselves like this in my video game if the other ones are going to die? Am I responsible for murder? I don't know. While sitting in the lawyer's office, Cicada messages Kiara and announces that she is only half black. She's also half Italian and wouldn't blame Kiara for kicking her out of the game for not being black enough. Kiara is having a surprised Pikachu face and is now like, she thinks that I am prejudiced? How could she get that idea from me? Is Kiara gonna have a second to self-reflect on the image that she's putting out that might make, Cicada say this to her? She doesn't. No, she doesn't. She doesn't think about it at all. She also doesn't answer Cicada in that moment because the lawyer comes in to talk to her. She tells the lawyer about her hypothetical game being for black people only and asks if that is illegal, and the lawyer says that technically yes, it is illegal and you can probably get sued for it. Quote, "The American justice system does not take discrimination cases lightly, and from the information that you've provided to me, the prosecution may have a case in this instance." Kiara is not happy and associates everything with discrimination. Quote, "My heart sinks all the way to the floor. That can't be right. There is no way that this can be legal. White people under Jim Crow legally kept their whites-only spaces, and to this day, black exclusionary spaces still exist, especially online. The fashion industry is predominantly white. Hollywood is still overwhelmingly white, and as Steph once pointed out, white people had a monopoly on the word nude until recently. White people are the standard in so many different industries, but the minute that black people build something for ourselves, we are wrong for causing division. Are we forgetting that Jim Crow isn't legal now? So that's not really an excuse. The fact that it's not legal is a strike against you, actually. The other things don't prove anything, because you have no reason as to why anything is how it is. People saying that nude equals peach is not discrimination. It's a bias, but it's not discrimination. Confirming that this has to be a joke, the lawyer says that she can't help since she is a family lawyer and what Kiara is looking for is a civil rights lawyer. Then she says the secret phrase to Kiara that other slayers say, and Kiara almost cries. The lawyer thanks her for making a place for her kids to go after school, and Kiara is like, quote, "I don't know what else to do but nod. All I did was make a video game. Anyone can do that nowadays by the power of Google and boredom. I haven't done anything spectacular. I'm not Nelson Mandela. I'm not MLK. I'm not Rosa Parks. I don't feel like I've done anything revolutionary, but this woman is looking at me like I've saved her life somehow." You're an entire game company paying nothing to maintain servers in France. But yeah, way to say that it's super easy to go and make an MMO of 500,000 players and maintain it without having any problems whatsoever. Just wow. The power fantasy in this is alarming. Now she's hiding from everything and Sakata is offline. Kiara thinks about what her answer might be to the question that Kiara asked, should she be kicked? And she says, maybe I'm not ready to answer that yet. It's really hard for Kiara to rectify how her mod is mixed race. Harder than I think it probably should be, but okay. She then sees that she has a duel from Spade and she takes it. The battle doesn't matter. I don't even know why it's here. She ends it early because she is upset and then gets a random message from someone named Dread who says, "You see the news segment? You had to be expecting this." It turns out that the guy's name is Dred Scott, which is explained in this quote. Quote, "This guy has named himself after the Dred Scott decision, the infamous 1857 Supreme Court case that ruled a Negro was not entitled to sue for his own freedom even though he lived in a free state. The case that ruled blacks were not and could not be citizens of the United States." He says that he's here to lead the charge in taking down this racist dumpster fire of a game. She clicks the guy's profile and finds the horror. Quote, "He's chosen the lightest skin color possible, which almost looks white. He's shaved his head bald and has given his character a tiny black symbol that looks like a 4-petal flower. Right between his eyebrows, that flower petal is the closest thing in the game to a swastika. And I can't imagine that's not exactly what he's intended it to be." Guys, the Nazis have invaded. Slay. Why are all of gamers Nazis? And I just gotta say, you know, they act like this because you give them a response. She genuinely thinks that she can't block him or she'll get sued. I mean, I guess she's a teenager, so then she could be that dumb, but also, he won't leave her alone. She has a TOS. If he breaks the TOS, then she can ban him and then just be like, he broke the TOS, bam. She asks him to leave her alone and he won't, so she logs off and cries until she passes out. By the way, this is also not how trolls generally operate. He would be wreaking havoc on the majority of the server, not necessarily targeting the dev, because he wants to get the most people riled up as possible. And if the dev is not there to bother, why would he not go and cause trouble with all the other players? Because as we know, there is only one mod, and the one mod cannot mod all of the server. He could be smarter at this, especially for a gaming addict, let's be real. Steph comes to see Kiara because she knows that something is up. Kiara comes clean about being the dev of Slay, and Steph says that she plays that and is excited to know that her sister is the creator. Quote, "Of course I slay. I'm a self-respecting black queen who just happened to beat you by 600 points in the savannah last week." She tells Steph that she feels responsible for the Kansas City death and also that she is being harassed by some guy on the server. Steph, you cannot be simultaneously the most powerful person in this game, the dev and the mod and the dev and the admin, and also be like, I'm victimized. Steph says that the guy is a plebeian, and she complains that, quote, all I ever wanted to do was escape into this magical world where for once I don't have to act a certain way because I'm black, and where I don't have to answer certain questions because I'm black authority in the room, and where if I do something that's not stereotypically black, I'm different. Steph is staring into the lamp now quietly, thinking until she says softly, I see why you like Malcolm, then. She says she's with Malcolm because he sees her for who she is and accepts her, yet also goes on to say, quote, my relationship with him has always been based on sameness and what we have in common, but he's more pro-black than I am. He reads Baldwin, Walker, Ellison, and even Du Bois, who, God rest his soul, who reads less like an anthem of the black experience and more like a refrigerator manual. It's dense, it's hard to get through, and sometimes fiction just sounds more fun. Sometimes Slay sounds more fun. Malcolm makes me feel guilty for not being black enough. Malcolm makes me feel guilty for not being black enough, even with all of his talk of rebelling against the concepts of a good Negro. He's pro-black and anti-white, two ideologies that sometimes overlap but are not the same thing. He's pro at a lot of things, but to realize that he's not nearly as progressive as I thought, that's hard for me to admit. The last thing that I want to do is call my boyfriend a liar. I don't hate white people like the news says I do. Harper and I have been friends since middle school, before Slay was even a thought. I've been to all of her birthday parties and she's been to all of mine. But she exhausts me sometimes because even though we're friends, she'll never really get what it's like to be me. But now I don't think that Malcolm will ever get what it's like to be me either. I think I love Slay so much because we're a mutually empathetic collective. As we duel, as we chat, there's an understanding that your black is not my black, and your weird is not my weird, and your beautiful is not my beautiful, and that's okay. It brings tears to my eyes if I think about it for too long, and here I thought I wasn't a crier. Can I just say, I don't think friendships specifically work by being like, I know exactly what it's like to be you. Because I don't think I'm just like either of my friends, any of my best friends, actually. We are not alike at all personality-wise, but we work because our personalities work together, but we are not the same. Steph then tells Kiara to duel Dredd with a bet. If she wins, he leaves, and then she has to offer him something if he wins. She then sleeps after shutting Malcolm down about hanging out that night. Moving over into a new perspective of a new character that doesn't matter. His name is Maurice, and he is in Beijing Hotel. He is a businessman looking for an ethical and cheap manufacturer in Beijing, but he doesn't want to be there. A couple of women knock on the door and offer him a massage. He says no thank you. They won't leave. Apparently, this whole segment is just to say people in Asia want a picture of him because they think that he's a celebrity, but he's just a normal human being. As a black man in Beijing, I am a celebrity, he says. Funny that this author chose the most international city in China to do this with when they're used to seeing foreigners there. The women get a picture with him and move on, and Maurice lays down and misses his wife in Paris. I was reading this chapter and going, is there literally no point to this other than to call more countries racist? Oh, also for him to log in as Spade and say that he didn't want to fight anyone hard before going after John's noob character, since he didn't want an actual battle but a bloodbath this time around, so he picked on a noob. Now we go back to Kiara's perspective, and she realizes that she's neglected her friend Harper all of this time and texts her. Kiara agrees to come over to Harper's house later for some gaming and grub. She also still has this feeling of guilt about Jamal dying. Kiara's over here admiring the food and how rich Harper is, and is wondering why she didn't come back sooner. Harper apologizes for asking about the dreads. Kiara asks if she can just be Harper's friend instead of like this special person that she always asks answers about the Black universe, and Harper says that if she gets dreads, it'll make a lot of people mad, and she just doesn't want to do that because it's just not worth it. Just after the girls make up, Wyatt comes in angry and covered in rain. Practice at school was canceled. Wyatt then sits himself down in the middle of the game room like a prat. Harper invites Kiara to go hang out in the piano room instead. I'm like, why don't they just go hang out in Harper's bedroom? Wyatt turns the news on, and they're talking about Slay again, saying that it caused murder. She gets mad at the guy on the news show, saying that she is targeting underprivileged kids now with her VR game. And then she thinks about, no, the kids that came to me in the grocery store and said the special game words to me were wearing uniforms for a private school, and Cicada goes to a prestigious college, so she is not targeting poor kids. So she is targeting rich kids? They're still talking about how the game is causing violence and it's dangerous. Quote, "I've never seen a video game that's specifically designed to target lower-income youths of color," says Jan, stroking the flames. "It sounds like it feeds off the anger of racial inequality in this country." Harper demands an apology from Wyatt from what he said the other day, and he says no. Harper demands an apology from Wyatt for what he said about the game and about racism at Kiara's house the other day, and he says no, he will not apologize. Kiara wants to brag about how she was able to program this entire game by herself, and he just loses in them, but she can't share that because it would out her. Wyatt is laughing about the possibility of suing the owner of Slay, or the developer. Wyatt is laughing about the idea of suing the developer of Slay, and then he brags about having the passcode to get into Slay, and Kiara is shook. Sure. She's also absolutely sure now that Wyatt is Dread. She leaves immediately, and then she leaves the house immediately and believes that she can't tell Steph or anyone else or it'll ruin Steph's relationship with Harper and all of her future. So instead, she needs to duel Dread to get rid of Wyatt. Kiara really thinks that she's a savior of the people in her video game. Quote, nobody has to worry about real life problems here. The police don't profile us, people don't gentrify our neighborhoods, and we don't have to remind people not to touch our hair. And if experiencing that here in my game just for a moment makes even one Slayer rethink their role in the world as a black person, if it gives them the power to face whatever they have to in the real life world, that's enough to make all of this worth it. Kiara gives a speech and puts pictures of Jamal Rice, the dead teenager, on the city hall until she can make something else that's a forever tribute in her game. She says the news is calling them thugs and criminals and racists for having a game. She says that Dread is calling this place discriminatory, which, granted, it is. You can say that it's good discrimination, but it is still discrimination. Quote, what he fails to realize about white people is that not everything is about them. She says, my people love it. Her people. Her user base? She is literally running a cult here. She dramatically raises a sword over her head and brings it to her face in a challenge to challenge Dread to a duel. She says that if he wins, she will give him her username. She says that she can't give out his username legally because of privacy issues, but then also just summons him with the admin console to drag him in front of the crowd that is already gnashing its teeth with blood and guts and desire for glory against this guy, knowing exactly who he is supposed to be as a villain. And the complex in this one quote, I can't explain what it means to know that I have over 60,000 people rallying behind me. I observe them all now and casually hold up my hand in silence. The multitude seem to begrudgingly quiet down while he types, and text appears above his head. So they make the duel, and if he loses, he leaves forever. If he wins, he gets the game and the character Emerald. Why she thinks that she can't just ban him is beyond stupid, and the troll is just as obsessive as Kiara about these things. He has to be, for him to be as specifically as dubious as she thinks he is. She asks where they're going to duel, and he says the swamp, and she turns that into yet another racist dog whistle. Quote, I'm assuming he's referring to the days of slavery when my ancestors ran from his ancestors and their dogs and whips in the swampy southernmost regions of the United States. I squint my eyes. It's hard for me to imagine that Wyatt might be an actual white supremacist, but everything from this faux swastika to the name Dread to his chosen biome smacks less of intimidation and more of all-out terrorization. Trollman signs off by saying, tomorrow, Snowflake, see you at dawn. The further I get into this book, the more I'm sure that it is written by somebody who is terminally online and who doesn't actually speak to real people. No offense. When Steph approaches Kiara upset about this bet, she's like, I thought that's what you wanted me to do. Don't act ignorant, Kiara. There is a difference between playing a game with someone and offering someone the whole game. She is so disingenuous, and there is no way that she's so ignorant, because look at how she literally is the genius of everything. Also, couldn't he just have the hustle card and sweep everything anyway? Like, he has the whole deck. ready to him. That's part of the bet, is he gets the whole deck. All he needs is the hustle card and he wins. Everyone is upset about the terms of the duel and Kiara is out here pouting. Cicada messages Kiara saying regardless of the outcome of the duel, Slay is the best thing that she has ever done. Kiara invites Cicada to keep playing because she doesn't get to be herself at school either, so she needs the game to express herself. You know how many kids at school can't openly express themselves there? I feel like, or they get ridiculed. I mean, yeah, I didn't go to school, but I see everybody getting ridiculed in television and in books, and I got ridiculed at church in that age group, so it's hard for everybody. So open membership win now for self-expression. Anyway, Cicada says she really needs Slay and she really needs Kiara. Kiara decides that she needs to be honest with Cicada and become actual friends. The first thing she decides that is the most important thing for Cicada to know about her is that she is an Aries. Now, I wish that Cicada had just cut the friendship right there because of bad experiences with Aries. It would have been the funniest thing, but that doesn't happen. They promise to meet in real life and then wish the luck of their ancestors on the battle. But do they share the same ancestors? Because this is like assuming a Chinese person and a Japanese person have the same ancestral history. Then we switch over to the perspective of someone that I assume is Cicada. It doesn't really tell you. It doesn't really establish anything when it starts out, but Cicada is also out here blaming herself for Jamal's death and not keeping the game safe enough. Again, he was killed for scamming other people and getting involved in people who didn't take kindly to him. It had nothing to do with the game and everything to do with his behaviors. Cicada is in the server room at her university, working on the server or something. There are some boys in the server closet down from the one that she's renting, and they're all talking in Italian, not French for some reason, after seeing Cicada. They mention how she is an African girl in their speech, and oh yeah, did I mention they are running Slay off of 6 servers that they are apparently renting from a university in Paris. She hears them talking about blockchain security and not wanting to ask her about it, so she gets offended and goes up to them saying that she'll explain in English, French, or Italian because those are all the languages that she speaks. Like, this was literally such a nothing burger that she gets upset over when she could have just walked out of that in the first place, but she didn't. Also, she walks out before they even say anything, so she doesn't even get to like bask in the annoyance. After leaving the school, she gets a phone call from her mother's doctor, and it is the phone call. Her mother is dying. She says that she wants to go home, but her mother says no. Also, talk to your dad some more. Cicada explains why she never talks to her dad. Quote, I haven't spoken to my Afro-Portuguese father in over a year, and he lives in Avignon. In his mind, I was never supposed to learn computer sciences beyond how to refresh a browser because it's too dangerous. Too dangerous for him, maybe. Too dangerous if you dabble in the layers of the internet no one should dabble in. Too dangerous if you gamble with your nest eggs on a site no responsible adult has any business visiting. Too dangerous if you blame the internet for the consequences of your actions instead of your own hubris. If I spoke one word of computer-related anything to him, the conversation would be over. And since coding has become my life, I have nothing to say to him. I won't call him, but I won't tell my mother this. So her mother is dying, and she is so proud of her daughter, and Cicada is like, quote, but my mom is white, and I knew that I was sworn to secrecy the day that I volunteered to be a Slay mod. I knew from the beginning of it that it meant that I couldn't tell certain members of my family what I do, not ever. But now, holding the phone to my ear, hearing my mother say that she's proud of me, something nauseating settles in the pit of my stomach like I'm lying to her in silence. There's a lump in my throat that I can't swallow. This is horrible on so many levels. She doesn't love her mother. You are willing to continually lie to your mother, and you are so threatened by just being honest with your mother. Oh my gosh, on her deathbed. She also has the nerve to say this while also going, quote, my mother, the only one that I can call when I am lonely, the woman who taught me to never be ashamed of who I am and to seize what I want in life, is about to leave this earth. Yet you can't even be honest with her about modding a video game. Just say that you're ashamed of modding the video game. That would be easier to take. The doctor asks if Cicada can come to see her mother within the next week before she dies, because that's all that she's really going to get. We go back over to Kiara's point of view, and she hopes that Malcolm is not at school to ask her about why she's not wearing makeup because she doesn't have the energy to answer. By lunch, Kiara hasn't seen Malcolm yet. Harper is basically worshiping Kiara at this point instead of being her friend, traded her granola for a cookie to give it to Kiara, and then we get this. Did I ever tell you why I call you Kix? You'd think since they've been friends since like childhood that Kiara would already know this, and so this conversation wouldn't actually happen now randomly. But we get an explanation of the nickname, which is just more groveling from Harper. Quote, Kix was a slip of the tongue when we first met the day at that funnel cake truck. I hadn't meant to say it. I meant to say Kiara. This cake is amazing, but I said Kix. This cake is amazing. And I didn't want you to think that I was an ass for saying your name wrong, so I played it off as if I meant to do that. Even back then, I couldn't admit when I was wrong, but now I'm admitting it. I was wrong. And listen, I'm sorry for what Wyatt said to you last night, and I know I technically didn't say I agree with him, but it took me way too long to say anything to him, which is almost as sad. So now Harper is also an apologist for things that she didn't do because relatives or something. Harper shows Kiara that Malcolm has been texting her asking if Kiara is ignoring her and then saying that Kiara is ignoring her. Harper says Kiara's boyfriend is getting kind of scary. Then he bursts into that cafeteria yelling, "Queen!" He is asking if she is just ignoring him now in the full room of the cafeteria. It's only been 24 hours since they last talked, maybe. And she is thinking about whether or not she can tell him about her love of video games and her safe space. Steph interrupts this confrontation with a hot cup of coffee in her hand that she just grabbed, thinking of mostly tossing it on Malcolm because that's the only purpose she grabbed it for, because that's the only reason she grabbed it. Kiara is worried about this hot cup of coffee ruining Steph's life and future. Malcolm tells Kiara to get her life together and then come and find him when she's done with that. Then he leaves. Kiara is hyping herself up for the battle with Dread, and then we get this line about Malcolm, quote, "He's such an asshole sometimes. Steph insists he's anti-feminist, and he insists that he's anti-feminist, but I don't think that he is. I think Malcolm wants equality for all people, black and white, but he thinks black people are owed more to make up for what's been done to us, like affirmative action and reparations. I don't know how to feel about reparations. Didn't she earlier say that Malcolm was anti-white? So how can you be for equality and also anti-white?" Later, randomly, Kiara asks Cicada if she believes in reparations, as if they're the same culture and history in France is the same as the history in America. Cicada says that she can't answer that because she's only half black and also she's not American. Cicada tells Kiara that her mom died last night and Kiara's mom comes home. She still doesn't want to tell her mom about the game because she thinks that her mom will be biased against it. Quote, "I don't know if she's ready to see the range of blackness that Slay covered. I'm already getting used to the fact that Steph slays. I'm not ready for my mom to know too." Despite how almost all of the created accounts log in at once, over 500,000 accounts for the first time ever, the server somehow does not crash or lag at all, magically. There's just a lot of navel gazing at this point as she thinks about how beautiful everything is, and she doesn't want to lose it. And you know she's not going to lose the game at the end of this book. It's set up that she's going to be the hero, please. And even if she did lose the game, then she would just build another one like it was nothing. She built this when she was 15. It was her first project. She's going to build another one and then be like, "Hey guys, here's the new one." Up to this point, we've seen her duel once. Now, up to this point in the book, we've only seen her duel once, and she forfeited that duel and she was losing. Then her sister said that she beat her in the game as well. The climax of this book is so weak that it's built to nothing. She had to train for nothing, work for nothing, and it's something that she's not even good at, but she's going to win anyway, as you'll see. Once battle time comes, Cicada is the MC. She looks like an angel and is using her voice chat, and Kiara is like, "Whoa, what the frick, her mic is on?" Kiara is hyping herself up, saying that she's here to protect her safe space. Quote, "I am the queen, and this is my game." As it gets into the fight, it's the most obvious power fantasy of cheering Kiara on and screaming. Dread enters the scene, no longer looking like Charles Manson with an armband, but is apparently wearing blackface. How is this possible unless it was programmed in by Kiara? That's the question. Anyway, enter Cicada. Quote, "We are here first and foremost to celebrate black excellence in all its forms, all parts of the globe. We are different ages, genders, tribes, tongues, and traditions, but tonight we are all black, most of us, and tonight we all slay." The battle is a tie, and everyone starts naming countries in the chat randomly. Kiara is like, "Wow, look at how widespread the Slayers are, but most of them are in Europe and the United States, just so you know." Cicada says that she wishes that her mom could meet Kiara, but she's dead now, and Kiara says, "I wish I could meet her too." Cicada goes, "But you're my family now, Kiara." Pretty much her only family since she won't talk to her dad, right? She dislocates her shoulder in the final round of the game as she throws herself across her room playing this VR game, but also somehow still wins. From her bedroom with her headset on, she hears her doorbell ringing, and then Harper is talking through the door, asking about homework, and says that Wyatt is there too, ready to apologize for what he said. She asks Dredd who he is then, since obviously Wyatt is outside. Turns out that Dredd is actually her boyfriend Malcolm, trying to show Kiara why black women should stay focused on being black women and not playing stupid video games. Malcolm then hacks into her webcam and talks to her, tells her that she owes the world answers for getting Jamal Rice killed. Bro, so outrageous. She texts Cicada saying that her boyfriend is the racist bad guy and that she is fine, and then passes out while laying on the floor. Kiara wakes up and she can't use her arm. 36 messages from Cicada in WhatsApp. Apparently, Kiara's picture is now all over Twitter. Kiara gets Steph to drive her to the hospital, and she gets a cast from breaking her own arm by throwing herself across the room while playing in VR. She also tells Cicada that her boyfriend is Dredd. Kiara is also afraid of being on TV and doxxed now, since people know who she is. Cicada thinks that Kiara's boyfriend is white because of how he's acting, and Kiara's like, no, he's black. He just doesn't recognize black excellence when he sees it. Kiara then has a realization about Malcolm, quote, "According to Malcolm, if black people are to progress, we need absolute focus, relentless drive, and undying ambition, and that looks like something very specific to him. Unless we're starting our own businesses, building a nuclear family, and avoiding white propaganda, we're not progressing. But the nuclear family doesn't work for everyone. Not every black man has to be an entrepreneur, and we don't all have to go to college. And not every piece of information and every social construct is a trick of the white man. He's wrong. He's been so wrong about everything. He acts like Harper and Wyatt are the enemy, and I hate it. I've always hated it. Harper and Wyatt may be clueless about a lot of things, often willfully. They may ask unfair questions and misunderstand me and make me feel like I'm some kind of alien from a distant planet. And yeah, there are white people out there who are full-blown bigots, racists, white supremacist assholes, many who literally hope we die off. But Malcolm made me realize another threat to my people, one that's less obvious, one that creeps in slowly like a disease. The threat of self-hatred. The idea that black people who don't live up to whatever standard society has are somehow less deserving of love and support. And if all of Malcolm's behavior so far hasn't convinced me of this thing with Dredd certainly has. Fuck respectability politics. Has she forgotten that making video games, especially one of 500,000 players, is actually a business, or should be? Oh my gosh. It's so insulting to game devs. Her realization doesn't last long, as she immediately on the next page is making excuses for Malcolm and being hurt when someone calls Malcolm a psycho. They drive home, where Steph continues to tell Kiara that Malcolm is a psycho. To prove this, Steph shows Kiara that Malcolm put out a hit for her on Twitter. That's right. Steph wants to call the cops because she sees how serious this is, and and Kiara is like, no police, you know what'll happen. Malcolm is just so confused, okay? He's not actually dangerous. And then now we've got why you can't call the cops on this. Quote, "You still don't get it. If they show up and arrest him, if he's lucky to live through getting arrested and I press charges, he's going to prison. White boys have committed literal murder and gotten community service. Black boys have been killed on site for selling loose cigarettes. If Malcolm goes to jail, he might never come out." No one has ever gotten community service for murder, but okay. Despite how she could die because Malcolm is nuts, she's still defending him. She can't call the police, and she won't call the police. Eventually, Steph defies Kiara and calls the cops anyway. Kiara just shuts up and doesn't say anything. Kiara then blocks Malcolm and moves on with her life. Glad that Malcolm made it to jail without being shot. She is also collecting oodles of fan mail, including Jamal's brother sending her a letter saying that he loves her game. She shows her parents the game as her sister plays and the cult grows. Kiara is also going to Paris, paid for by Cicada. This also results in making a deal with that Maurice guy from the earlier chapter to blanket Slay under his company to continue their discrimination, but with the coverage and money of a corporation to buy lawyers. Kiara also tells her parents that she didn't tell them about the game because she didn't think that they would accept the blackness of the game. Tears are shed, parents apologize for not listening to Kiara more, and mom calls Kiara basically a civil rights leader for making her game. The closing chapter is on a plane on her way to her new destiny. Not Atlanta. but the promised land of Paris. As she gets there, she realizes that Jamal would have been killed even if it wasn't over video game currency, and she determines that she is going to make a card in his honor to remember him by. She says that she believes that all black people will be successful and that Du Bois was wrong about there only being 10% at the top of everything. Steph and Kiara then run to Sakata in the airport, and she's thinking how this is black girl magic. The end. I mentioned so much of the thoughts that I wrote down in general throughout the whole rest of this, but just to summarize some of the things, the game logic in this doesn't work at all. There's one mod for 500,000 people, and they all get on the server at once for the first time, and it never crashes, and it's an international server in a university. How is she maintaining this? How is she paying for it? You know how much bandwidth that costs to run? It's not going to be run on $60 that she makes every so often doing tutoring at school. There's no way. How did this 15-year-old manage to make this entire giant game and all of it on free art given to her by indies that none of them were credited and none of them were used as part of any of this? Game-wise, I don't understand why the game is a card game and not just a battle. Also, yeah, because they like play cards, but then also they battle, but then also they're playing cards. It's funny how obsessed this is with representing culture, but it's generally mostly American culture, except for dropping random things in that it doesn't actually explain what they are or what the background is on them when they are African culture, but most of the references are American culture. And everybody wants to, obviously, the French girl wants to go to California and the American girl goes to France. This is also one of the most openly hostile and hateful fiction books that I have read from traditional publishing in a very long time, but let me know what you think on that or the voice of the book. Also, we had a lot of lazy chapter introductions where a random character was mentioned, and I think it was mentioned there to kind of show the connectivity of all of these players online, but they added nothing to the story but a disruption, and all of them started out with, my name is blah blah blah, and I'm a blah blah blah. Yeah, I could tell that this was written in 11 days and not edited, like, at all. If it was edited, it was copy edited. It was not developmentally edited to make it something better. This book also repeated itself a lot. The multiple point perspective also seemed like filler because it really didn't add anything. The book also took forever to introduce any sort of antagonist or goal. About halfway through the book, maybe, and then we start to meet Dredd, but he's not really important to anything. We've also got the power fantasy that is Kiara is good at everything that she does all the time. Everything that she tries, she is the best at, and everybody loves her. Oh my gosh. Also, when Kiara goes to the doctor and gets her arm put in a cast for breaking it, the nurse hands her a script, a prescription for ibuprofen. You get ibuprofen over the counter, my dude. It's on the shelves. Also, it was interesting, there were no French people in France. Everyone that we heard about was either speaking Italian. Sakata says there are a lot of Spaniards here. Her neighbors were American. And nobody but Sakata was described as being from France or Parisian. So there's that. Anyway, that's the book. I'm not going to say too much on it because this video is already long, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have you read Slay? Will you read Slay? What does this tell you about the traditional publishing industry? I just wanted to bring that to you because this is what traditional publishing is doing. My guy. Well, good luck to us all. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?